Hello, everyone. This is Anas Al Obaidi, and in this video or session uh, will be the fourth topic or fourth video or fourth session for chapter 9 from the whole curriculum or syllabus of the Advanced Medical Science Liaison and Medical Monitor Certification, for short AMSLC course certification course by the CCRPS. And this is the fourth session or fourth video from this chapter 9, as chapter 9 is about the clinical trial phases and procedures. And the topic or the session for this video will be about the monitoring in pediatric and vulnerable population uh, trials. Introduction about the topic as clinical trials involving pediatric and vulnerable populations present unique and complex challenges. Of course, the challenges here will be unique and different in comparison to other challenges, other type of challenges for other implementations or applications in clinical research, as these particular challenges are complex because due to involvement of pediatric or any vulnerable population in clinical research. These two groups, the vulnerable populations, which include children, individuals with cognitive impairments, or those with severe medical conditions, are particularly sensitive due to their physiological, psychological, and social characteristics. Monitoring these trials is critical to ensuring their ethical compliance, producing reliable data, and maintaining participant safety. So all these components need to be maintained as it is maintained in any other, as they are being maintained and protected in any other trial. By safeguarding the most at-risk participants, monitoring in such trials underscores the core tenets of clinical research ethics and regulatory integrity. The physiological disparities in children, ranging from organ immaturity to rapid metabolic changes, make drug responses unpredictable. And this is um, a known challenge for such vulnerable population participation in clinical trial. Similarly, ethical complexities arise when obtaining assents from children or consents from legally authorized representatives, as the consent that being obtained from the children or minors are called assents, while from adults are called consents. Small sample sizes in rare diseases trials compound logistical and scientific challenges, while adverse event assessment becomes more nuanced. Monitoring must adapt to these complexities using proactive and advanced strategies to identify and mitigate risks. The growing use of decentralized clinical trials, for short DCTs, wearable health devices, and advanced analytics provides a framework for efficient and effective oversight. Now, the key points for the topic for the day. We'll start with the importance of monitoring in pediatric and vulnerable population trials. As despite of the order, we'll start with the safety. Monitoring ensures the early identification of adverse events to prevent unnecessary harm, unwanted harm, unnecessary harm, to prevent any harm actually. Vulnerable populations such as children or cognitively impaired adults, and those just examples for the vulnerable populations because it's far more um, varieties in the vulnerable populations, often lack the ability to self-report adverse effects accurately, making active safety monitoring indispensable. As for an example, Real-time monitoring in a pediatric epilepsy drug trial detects early signs of neuropsychiatric side effects, prompting immediate intervention. And this is just an example for the safety in such vulnerable population. Data integrity. Precise monitoring protects the reliability, accuracy, and completeness of a trial data, which is essential for valid conclusions. So accuracy, reliability in data. Having the most accurate, proper data, appropriate data will ensure, and it is essential, it is crucial for valid conclusions. And this is data integrity. So as for an example, monitoring the proper dosing of investigational drugs in neonatal trials ensures accurate data on therapeutic responses. Ethical compliance. So vulnerable populations require strict adherence to ethical guidelines to protect their rights. Monitoring ensures that ethical and legal obligations, such as, for instance, informed consent and participant protections, are upheld. Example, trial staff use videos to provide age-appropriate information to children during the assent process, as we said, uh, um, um, obtaining consent from minors or children called assent. It's not called, it doesn't called consent anymore. Consent from the is the consent with the adults, from the adults, but from children, assent. So during the assent process, which is periodically reviewed to ensure compliance. Public trust. Monitoring mechanisms enhance transparency, building public confidence in clinical research involving the vulnerable groups or vulnerable populations. As for example, centralized dashboards share aggregated safety data from pediatric vaccine trials with the government health organizations. And here's a summarized diagram about monitoring in clinical trials. We have the safety that ensures early identification of adverse events to prevent harm. Ethical compliance upholds rights and guidelines for vulnerable participants. Data integrity, in order to have the valid conclusions, protects the reliability and accuracy of trial data. Now, the challenges in monitoring pediatric and vulnerable population trials. Um, In spite of the order, we'll start with the physiological differences, as children's developing organs and metabolic processes mean they respond differently to treatments compared to adults. So, in comparison to adults, the response into the study medication or IP or the investigational product or SM for study medication, um, it is different in children's in compared to the adults due to development of the organs or developing organs and metabolic processes. Now, vulnerable populations such as pregnant women considered a kind or a type of vulnerable population in clinical trials, or critically ill patients may also exhibit unusual pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic profiles. And here, by pharmacodynamic, the signs and symptoms, the body changes, or the signs and symptoms that will appear or show uh, on the body of the participant or the patient upon starting or upon being on the investigational product or the study medication. While pharmacokinetic profile is ADME for short, ADME, as A for absorption, D for distribution, M for metabolism, and E for excretion. So those four processes or four steps. Uh, uh, those are the steps or processes that happen through the pharmacokinetic, and it's called pharmacokinetic profile. So may also, for such examples as pregnant women or critically ill patients, for such two kinds as an examples or two types of vulnerable populations may also exhibit unusual pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic profiles. Example, adjustments in antibiotic dosing for preterm neonates due to renal immaturity and due to the kidney immaturity or immaturity of the kidneys or kidney, there will be adjustments in the dosages of the antibiotic that is, for instance, antibiotic under investigation or the investigational product or the study medication is an antibiotic, as for an example. Ethical and consent issues. Pediatric and cognitively impaired populations cannot provide fully informed consent themselves. Legal guardians or representatives are often tasked with decision making, but adequate participation of the individual remains necessary. So, even with that, the adequate participation, involvement of the individual who is the patient, participating patient, or subject can be identified as subject uh, needs to be maintained. It is necessary their participation needs to be maintained. Example: a 12-year-old provides verbal assent for a trial, while the legal guardian provides consent. Simple as this example. Small sample sizes. Recruitment is often difficult. And here, the patient, the subject's recruitment is often difficult, especially for rare disease trials, resulting in small or homogeneous data sets. Solution for that: collaboration, as collaborative international trials increase participant diversity and sample size. Adverse event tracking, AE tracking. So baseline conditions in vulnerable populations, such as organ immaturity or chronic disorders, may complicate the interpretation of adverse events, AEs. As for example, fever reported in pediatric vaccine trials needs careful evaluation to distinguish between vaccine response and pre-existing conditions. And this is a very simple example. Summarize the idea of tracking of the tracking uh, of the adverse events AE. As we have, if we have a trial for children, vaccines for children, pediatric vaccine, and children are a vulnerable population or populations. Um, so here, if fever was reported as an adverse event, now the fever need to be distinguished whether it's due to the vaccine, that is the investigational product, or the study medication, the vaccine that is under investigation. Is it due to that, due, due to it, or due to a pre-existing condition that has nothing to do with the vaccine, or that has nothing to do with investigational product. Data privacy and security. Sensitive data from highly vulnerable populations require robust protection against breaches or misuse. Example: encrypted e-consent electronic consent platforms adhere to HIPAA and GDPR, HIPAA in USA and GDPR in EU, European Union standards, protecting pediatric patient data in multinational trials. And, and this is a simple example on how to maintain and protect the privacy of the data and the security of the data. Here, a summarizing diagram about navigating challenges in pediatric trials. As challenges in pediatric and vulnerable population trials, we have the physiological differences, ethical and consent issues, and small sample sizes. Then we have the best practices for monitoring clinical trials. Despite the order, we'll start with the risk-based monitoring, RBM. RBM, risk-based monitoring, prioritizes oversight resources on high-risk processes, reducing unnecessary monitoring without compromising data quality. Now here, RBM, or the risk-based monitoring, its job, its role is to prioritize the resources for the oversight on high-risk processes. So here, as a result, as an outcome, wanted outcome or needed outcome, uh, is to reduce the unnecessary, the unwanted, unneeded, the not needed monitoring without compromising data quality. meaning with maintaining the quality of the data. Example, a phase 1 oncology trial for children prioritizes monitoring for dose escalation, safety, and serious adverse events, SAEs. Real-time data monitoring. Using electronic case report forms, ECRFs, or EDC electronic data capture, researchers gain access to live trial data for immediate problem solving and risk identification. Example, cloud-based monitoring platforms highlight abnormal vital signs during overnight pediatric admission studies. Next, we have the adaptive protocols. So adaptable trial protocols facilitate real-time updates addressing participant safety and ethical concerns as the trial progresses, as the trial is ongoing. Example, a trial investigating a novel asthma treatment adapts its dosing regimen based on initial efficacy and safety results. And this is just an example on adaptation of the trial protocols. Then we have data monitoring committees, DMCs for short, and independent DMC. So, data monitoring committees or data monitoring committee is independent, third kind of party that you work independently, not linked to the sponsor and not linked. They are not linked to the site that is conducting the trial, meaning they work independently. So DMCs, short for Data Monitoring Committees or Committee, independent DMCs provide unbiased oversight in high-risk trials, ensuring participant safety and ethical compliance. Example, a DMC, a Data Monitoring Committee, pauses a trial following early severe side effects observed in pediatric hemophilia patients. And they decided that independently, without being affected or without being influenced by any party. We have the comprehensive staff training. Equip the trial team with knowledge regarding pediatric pharmacokinetics, developmental stages, communication methods, and ethical best practices. As an example, specialized training for site staff in managing parent and caregiver concerns ensures a clear communication and trust building. And here is a nice summarized diagram about clinical trial monitoring strategies, as we have the RBM, risk-based monitoring, we have the adaptive protocols, and we have the real-time data monitoring. Regulatory guidelines for monitoring vulnerable population trials. Despite of the order, we'll start with international guidelines. And we know here ICH E11. ICH, as we know, is the International Council for Harmonization. E11 provides a framework for ethical trial design and execution in pediatric research. So it's about E11 here in ICH is about the pediatric participation in the clinical trials. WHO standards, WHO, World Health Organization standards, advocates for protecting vulnerable demographics through ethical and culturally sensitive methods. As for an example, ensuring equitable global access by standardizing endpoint definitions and rare disease studies across cultural settings. U.S. United States FDA Food and Drug Administration guidelines. We have the pediatric study mandates as requires data collection in minors when the intervention is expected to impact them. Example, we have the real-time interim analysis ensure FDA recommended dose adjustments during trials involving growth hormones. We have also in European Union, in EU, European Medicines Agency, EMA. The EMA emphasizes ethical consistency across multiple regions, especially concerning pediatric and elderly populations. As for example, centralizing protocol approval for multinational pediatric cancer trials under a unified framework that aligns with the GDPR. And here, a summarized diagram on regulatory guidelines for clinical trials. We have the ICH 11 International Council for Humanization, E11, Section E11. We have also United States FDA, US FDA. We have the WHO, World Health Organization standards, and we have the EMA as of European Medicines Agency. Recent advancements in monitoring. So, despite of the order, we have A, we'll start with decentralized clinical trials, DCTs for short. Innovations like telemedicine, wearables, and mobile health apps offer better access and flexible monitoring options. Example, a glucose tracking wearable monitors diabetic adolescents in a telemedicine central trial. This is a simple example on DCT. Artificial intelligence AI safety algorithms, AI analyzes vast datasets, identifying anomalies that warrant immediate investigation. As for example, an AI artificial intelligence system predicts seizures in pediatric epilepsy patients by analyzing continuous EEG data. Genomics integration. Personalized medicine leverages genomic data to predict individual responses to a drug, aiding in trial design and safety monitoring. As for example, pharmacogenomic analysis identifies high-risk children who could develop toxic effects from chemotherapy. RWD, real-world data integration, as real-world data integration enriches insights by complementing monitored trial data with post-market studies. And as we know here, post-market studies is phase four, which is post-marketing surveillance. And here, that's why it's called real-world data, as actual patients taking the medication in phase four, thousands, the population will be as surveillance or monitoring will occur after the approval for the investigational product or study medication to be in the market, so post-market studies or post-market surveillance. Example, linking national immunization registries to vaccine trial outcomes reveals rare but serious adverse events, AEs, among young children. E-wearable technologies, real-time patient monitoring through wearables minimizes hospital stays while improving data resolution. Example, a heart monitoring wearable flags irregular heart rhythms in neonates during a trial evaluating a new antiarrhythmic drug. And here's the diagram summarizes innovations in clinical trial monitoring and as of recent advancements, we have the DCTs, decentralized clinical trials, AI, artificial intelligence safety algorithm or algorithms, genomics integration, real world data integration, and the real world data integration, RWD integration that occurs in phase four as in post-marketing studies or surveillance. Applications in practice, as in monitoring challenge and the real world application, we have adverse event tracking, real world application like fever detection and post immunization pediatric trials, ethical issues, age adjusted assent materials for children in behavioral studies, data privacy, encrypted e consent, electronic consent systems for multinational rare disease trials, rare disease recruitment, global collaborations to boost patient numbers, real-time anomaly detection, AI, artificial intelligence flagging dropouts in pediatric mental health trials, DCT, decentralized trial monitoring, remote wearable use in adolescent oncology. By diligently leveraging these methodologies, regulatory protocols, and technologies, clinical trials can provide robust protections for children and other vulnerable populations, like pregnant women, while ensuring reliable and impactful scientific findings, meaning while keeping and maintaining the quality and the patient safety. We have some summary tables. we have this table, importance of monitoring in vulnerable population trials as aspect, objective, example, challenge, and benefit. Aspect, we have the safety, data integrity, ethical compliance, real-time response, and public confidence, which is the public trust. Another table about the challenges in monitoring pediatric and vulnerable populations, the challenge, the problem, real world impact, solution, and implementation. Example for an implementation. As challenges, we have unique physiology, consent complexity, small patient pools, AE, adverse event identification, data volume disparity. Another table about the best practices for monitoring vulnerable population trials, the best practice implementation strategy, example, benefit, and required tools. The best practices here we have risk-based monitoring, RBM, real-time data monitoring. We have the adaptive protocols, data monitoring committees, DMCs for short, and staff training. Another table about regulatory guidelines for vulnerable populations, the guideline, the scope, the key requirement, application example, and oversight agencies. As a guideline, we have ICH E11 about the pediatric participation in trials, WHO ethical standards, World Health Organization, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, pediatric rule in USA, GDPR regulations in EU and European Union, US/EU, European Union harmonized guidelines. We have a table about the recent advancements in monitoring vulnerable populations, the advancement, the feature, the application example, advantage, and tools required. Advancement, we have decentralized trials, DCTs, AI safety algorithms, artificial intelligence, real-world data integration, RWD integration, and that happens in post-marketing surveillance studies or trial, which is phase 4. Genetics-based risk modeling, and we have the electronic consent, e-consent. Application table, the scenario. For each scenario, we have the key principle applied, we have the key actions, timeline, and what to watch out for. As of scenario, we have monitoring adverse events in pediatric vaccine trials, key principle applied safety. Scenario of ensuring ethical consent in trials for cognitive impairments, we have the key principle applied ethical compliance. Scenario addressing small recruitment pools in rare disease studies, we have the key principle applied multicenter collaboration. The scenario of managing drug metabolism differences in neonatal trials, the key principle applied pediatric pharmacodynamics. As of scenario as well, tracking adverse reactions in adolescents oncology decentralized trials. We have the key principle applied decentralized monitoring. The scenario of tailoring monitoring approaches for rare genetic disorders. Key principle applied genomic risk prediction. The scenario of real-time safety tracking in epilepsy drug studies. AI, the artificial intelligence-based anomaly detection was applied as a key principle for it. Scenario of tracking remote compliance in behavioral health trials, the key principle that was applied, RBM, risk-based monitoring, protecting data privacy in global trials for teenagers, key principle applied, data privacy, harmonizing regulatory compliance in multinational pediatric studies, the key principle applied was regulatory alignment. Next, we'll try to review using some MCQs, multiple choice questions. As of question why is monitoring in pediatric and vulnerable population trials particularly important? Is it A, to meet faster regulatory deadlines? Is it B, to minimize investigator workload? Is it C, to protect participants and ensure ethical compliance, mostly? Is it D, to prioritize cost-saving procedures? So it is C, to protect participants, the vulnerable participants, and ensure their ethical compliance or the ethical compliance while conducting the trials for within these vulnerable populations as being participants or subjects. As pediatric and vulnerable populations face higher risks due to their physiological and ethical sensitivities, monitoring ensures participant safety, ethical compliance, and the integrity of clinical trial data. Question 2, what is one of the primary challenges in conducting trials for vulnerable populations? Is it A, oversized trial sample recruitment? Is it B, complex inclusion and exclusion criteria? Mostly B, as we mentioned earlier, the complexities that might align or associated with uh, conducting trials for vulnerable populations, right? So is it C, insufficient clinical data systems for data trial for adult trials, or D, overlapping regulatory approvals? So it is B, complex inclusion and exclusion criteria. As vulnerable population trials, especially rare disease studies, often have detailed protocols, complex protocols. This complexity can lead to recruitment challenges and procedural deviations without effective monitoring. Question 3. Which best practice helps improve safety monitoring for pediatric trials with frequent dose adjustments? Is it A, delayed adverse event reporting systems? Is it B, static monitoring plans from trial initiation? Is it C, adaptive protocols based on real-time data? Or D, standardized consent processes for adults? So it is C, the adaptable protocols. So adaptive protocols based on real-time data is the choice, as adaptive protocols allow trial protocols and monitoring plans to evolve as the new data emerges, improving safety and effectiveness, especially in trials that involve variable dosing. Question 4. What advancement significantly improves adverse event detection in pediatric trials involving wearable devices? Is it the blockchain, storage for historical trial data? Is it genomics-based preliminary risk assessments? Is it the real-time anomaly alerts and via algorithms? Or D, manual statistical models for site comparison? So it is C, the real-time, the real-time monitoring, the real-time reporting, real-time data is the choice, as real-time anomaly alerts via algorithms through the wearable devices, or through the wearable devices, or through the algorithms being used through the AI, artificial intelligence. As when artificial intelligence, such algorithm used as an advancement in clinical research trials. So algorithms integrated with wearable monitoring devices can detect anomalies like critical temperature changes or cardiac events in real time. Or as the previous example we explained earlier, diabetes uh, clinical research trials, monitoring through wearable devices in order to have real-time alert and real-time data about while monitoring the blood glucose levels. Enhancing participant safety in pediatric trials. Question 5. How do international regulations such as ICH E11, that is more section E11 in ICH, International Council for Harmonization, that is more particularly about the pediatric participation in clinical research, support monitoring in pediatric populations? Is it A, by mandating extended eligibility quotas? B, by standardizing pediatric safety, ethical practices, and trial designs, mostly this one. C, by eliminating age-related consent requirements. D, by restricting multi-center collaboration. So it is B, by standardizing pediatric safety, ethical practices, and trial designs. As guidelines like ICH E11 ensure ethical and safety practices for pediatric trials through harmonized standards and recommendations for trial design, safeguarding this vulnerable population. And here we come to the end of this video. We come to the end of this session. Thank you very much and goodbye.